the session EX27 on Microsoft Translator. We're going to talk about the technology that sits behind some things that I'm sure you've played with before. Microsoft Translator is a technology coming out of Microsoft Research, and it's used in IE8, it's used in the new version of Office. It's also the same engine that sits behind the Bing Translator, the consumer-facing Bing translation engine. I'm Dr. Neil Rudin, and I work for a company called N Squared, and we partner with Microsoft Research to help them on one of their key focuses, which is getting the technology out to partners and developers so that you as partners and developers can start using this technology in your own websites, in your own software, in your own smart client applications. And with me
I'm Vikram Dendi. As Neil mentioned, I work in Microsoft Research, and we are a very unique team in that while we sit in research, we actually run a production scaled-up service, a full-blown cloud service. And there are a lot of benefits to us being in MSR because this service does require a tremendous amount of investment by way of research, and this technology is built over many, many years of research in the natural language processing group. So I represent the team, and Dr. Neil has been fantastic helping us realize the focus that we have on helping partners and developers get the best out of translation.
So in case you weren't aware, we do live in a multilingual world, and there's this huge mass of potential audience that we may not be reaching if we are keeping our content to a single language. And really one of the things we want to help you address is how to reach that wider audience. How can you take advantage of this market opportunity that exists beyond the language that you currently publish your content in? Now, previously, if you wanted to do this, you would have had to pay a translator to go through all of your content and translate it, and you'd have to pay them for each language. So you really used to have two choices. You either paid a fair amount of money per language to have all your content translated, or you didn't do it. And what Microsoft Translator gives us the opportunity to do is enable you, as a webmaster or a developer, to add translation for very close to free to your website. So we don't want you to miss out this market opportunity. And what I want to do over the next hour is really show you how easy it is and some of the features of Microsoft Translator that you can plug into with your website, with your application, with your software. So actually last year we made some announcements at MIX10 of version 1, and that's shipped, which enables simple language translation. We detect languages, we support over 30 languages, and it's based on a huge amount of work that's happened in the natural language processing team at Microsoft Research. 10 years of work has gone into building this stuff. For you as a developer or a webmaster, you have multiple options. The widget is really, if you like, a no-code option. We will generate the code for you, and you can copy and paste it into your HTML and have the widget running on your site, and I'll show you that in a minute. Then if you want to do some JavaScript, we have an Ajax API that you can plug into. We have HTTP endpoints, and we support a SOAP web service. So the Translator widget version 1, really, like I said, it's this no-code solution. You really copy and paste a little bit of code, and it enables the entire contents of your web page to be translated. The way it translates is pretty smart. it uses this progressive rendering technique. So you can actually see the page initially rendered in the original language, and then it'll go through the content and re-render it in the language that you've chosen to translate into. So what I might do at this point is flip over to my laptop and show you a demo of this working. This is the kind of site that we think would be attractive, a tourist type site. Someone's coming to a new town looking for something. They may be coming from speaking different languages. So we see these kind of sites as typical sites that would want translation and can get real business advantage out of translation straight away. So let's take this site and first of all add a widget to it. So I've just got the code here. You go to microsofttranslator.com/widget and you will get this form that you fill in. And you fill in with your site address, the language that your site is rendered in or displayed in. You can change the color of the widget so it fits in a bit more with your site. You can change the width of the widget. And then you can generate the code. So this code, let me just copy and paste that. I can paste that into my site code. So if I find a nice place to paste it into, let me see. If I put it down here, that's just underneath the left-hand stack. So if I paste that code in there, save it, rebuild the site, you can see here now that I have the widget added very simply. I can translate it, and you can see it does that progressive rendering and translates the site here into Thai. And we could pick another language. So we could say a language that goes a different way around, maybe. It's a little more complicated. And there you go, it's translated it. Someone said Dutch. They want it in Dutch, okay, just to prove that it can be done. Yeah. And the other thing you'll see is as you hover over, you get the original text as well. So we keep the original text, but what we're doing here really is translating the whole site. And it might be that you don't want to translate the whole site. Like you probably wouldn't want to translate the title, especially if it's a brand or something like that. So there is another option, which is to take out that widget and to use the Ajax API. So let's just go to the top here. And the Ajax API, very, very simple. You just include some script. I'm just going to remove the comments here. Saves me remembering this huge URL. You'll also notice there's an app ID here. So when you register, you'll get given an app ID. I'll show you that again in a minute. And I'm going to translate just one paragraph. And it's a paragraph I've marked with a specific ID, so an element ID. And you can see I'm translating from English to Spanish. I just call Microsoft Translator translate. I get the element of the ID that I'm translating from language to language. So let's just go down and check where that element is. So it's actually just that block here. You can see I've set the ID to translate this. So if I run this, you'll see that most of the site remains in English, but just this one paragraph has been translated. So just the div that I marked with an ID has been translated. So it's very, very simple to get the version 1 API plugged in. Now the version 1 API also supports HTTP and also supports SOAP. It was very clear that you wanted more, and actually so did we. We wanted richer options for doing translation. If you take that example that I just did, I may want to select 3 or 4 divs at the same time and translate those in one go, rather than having to do each one at a time in a call. So that kind of thing was something that I really wanted to do. I wanted to be able to enable the results to be changed because while they're pretty good, sometimes within the specific context of the thing that's the content on my site or on a site, it might not be exactly what I want to say. And so I want to be able to change those results. And actually, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually get the text read out as audio from the site? So these are the things we wanted. So what did we get?
So this is actually quite interesting from history perspective. So when we announced this at MIX last year, what Neil showed you was basically the demo that we did at that time. So it was very simple, a very easy way for you to integrate translation into your site. And we called this idea Anywhere Translations. So the idea was, let's give you a broad set of APIs and even a no-code option so that you can take this and integrate this into your product, your site, your community, and benefit from it. And since that time, as Neil mentioned, there are a number of things that we have thought of, and we have gotten a lot of feedback from you on. And so we are announcing today the version 2 of our APIs and the version 2 of our widget. And the highlight of that, or one of the highlights of that, is the concept of going from anywhere translations and adding collaborative translations, so that you or your community can basically go in and help improve the translation and actually modify the translation to work better on your site. So there have been many attempts in the past where if you got a bad machine translation, you just sent some feedback back to the machine translation provider, and you didn't know what happened to it. Maybe they took it, maybe they didn't. But with collaborative translations, you actually would see immediate benefits that actually benefit your site and your community, and also benefit other communities. And we'll come to more detail on that. We also are adding a bunch more customizability to the widget. So you can think about what you want to do better with the widget. Do you want to notify people if their browser is set to a different language, and those sorts of options as well. And as Neil mentioned, we are also looking at adding batch translations to the API. So be it the SOAP, HTTP, or AJAX APIs, you can batch up your translations and get a lot more done in one call. And text-to-speech support is very interesting. We obviously have some other big announcements going on today that might actually use this type of a functionality, especially on an on-the-go type of a scenario. We've also been asked quite a bit from a lot of enterprises about secure socket layer support so that they can securely communicate with the service. And so we're announcing that as well today. And we'll also talk a little bit about the Silverlight control, which will be part of the Silverlight toolkit. That's the open source toolkit that is available from Microsoft.
Great. That's awesome. So this is all shipping now?
Yep.
Live now. So what I want to do is take you through how you do this. How do we use these different features? So the first set of features I'm going to walk through is the richer translation options. So first of all, how do we batch things together? How can we detect languages as batches? How can we do translation as batches? And also one of the features is breaking up sentences. And breaking up sentences can be useful to turn the text or the content that you've got into pieces that you can then translate one at a time, or you can translate those pieces individually, but it actually can be used for other things as well. So let's think about how we can actually get going with doing some of this. The first thing you're going to need is an app ID. So you need to go to bing.com/developers/createapp.aspx, and in here you put in your information. You'll first need to log in with your live ID. You put in some information about the application or the site that you're building, your company name, and you will be given an app ID. And you can get many app IDs for different websites that you need to use them. Once you have an app ID, you can start calling through to this service. So let's first of all have a look at, for example, breaking up the sentences. So we'll just run it. As John Harris told me this morning, the best way of doing a demo is to show it first. So just take some text out of the New York Times and paste it in here. And you'll see here that we're doing a call, and we're finding how many sentences there are, and we can just validate that there's different number of sentences. Make sure I'm not cheating here or anything. Hopefully there are a different number of sentences here. No, there's not. Find me a paragraph that does. Yeah, just add another sentence, thank you.
Yeah.
There we go. And I've lost my mic too. Hold on. Okay. So how does that work? Let's go back to the code, because that's the interesting piece. So you can see my app ID up here, which is a GUID. Please don't copy it. Well, I'll probably delete it after this session anyway. And then we have a URI for the HTTP call. And then we're calling the HTTP service, break sentences with the app ID. We're passing in the text that we want translated and the language that that text is in. We make a call to the service. We post that request, and we get the response out. And you can see the response from this request is actually an array of integers. So if we put a breakpoint here, run that again, see what we actually get out, you'll see that the results, oh, let me just get that up, if you can see that, but it's 2 integers, and actually what's in there is the number of letters per sentence. So if that's useful to you as well, to find longer sentences or shorter sentences, that's available. So breaking up sentences is one thing. The next thing that we talked about is being able to batch this. And so now we can put a set of translations into an array and call through to the service and get that array translated. So let's just quickly have a look at that in action. What I'll do is I'll just put the same sentence in each item, but you can imagine you could have different divs, different content in here, and we're translating. And there we go, and it's come back. Now actually what we've got here, and I'll show you how to break this up in a minute, but what we've got here is the raw result being pushed back. So if we look, first of all, we're building out that request body. This is not the recommended way of doing it, by the way, but for the sake of a demo, it's very self-explanatory what's happening here, because you can actually read the text. Obviously, we recommend that you don't build out your code this way, but you use some of the builder tools that are available in .NET. And then what are we getting back as a result? You can see here we're just getting that stream back out, and we're splatting it back out onto the screen at the moment. So in the next demo I want to show you, let's just shut that. We're going to detect the languages in an array. So we're going to use that same concept of an array. So here I've got some different languages. I've got German, French, and English. And it's detected languages. And here we're actually breaking that out into the results. So how are we doing that? What you can see here is when we make the request is detect array. So we're detecting an array of text input. We make that post. The response we get, we're reading back out into this stream serializer or data contract serializer, which is an object in .NET. We're reading that back out into the list, and then we've got the list already broken up. So again, C#, VB.NET, any of the .NET languages, it's actually very, very simple to do this in the raw if you want to. Yes, and it doesn't have to be a Microsoft language. Of course, you can do it on your iPhone app, on your Windows Phone 7 app in XNA, which would be a Microsoft language.
That's right. Can't help it if, the Microsoft languages are easy to use, right? But you can definitely use it in PHP or any other.
And in fact, we've got a Getting Started guide for PHP developers up on the website, on the MSDN website as well. So, already had that
backwards.
So that was the demo. So the next thing we want to be able to do is adjust the translated results. We want to enable you as webmasters, but also as people that are maybe viewing a site or viewing some content, to submit alternatives back up to the system. And if you are a webmaster, we want you to be able to maybe pick which alternatives get displayed on your site and manage the submissions that other people are making on your site.
And you might have some combination of services. You might have a website, you might have an app, you might have a mobile app, and you might want all these to benefit from the edits that you're making or that your community is making. And all of that is possible through the collaborative translations piece.
So let's have a look at this, adding a translation. I'll just go back to full screen, give you a bit more code. So here what we're going to do is just add a very simple translation back up to the translation service. We click add and it gets added. So more interesting than just seeing that is seeing the code behind it. And again, you can see it's a very simple set of, it's an HTTP call, although you can do this with Ajax, you can do this with SOAP as well. You just call add translation, you pass in your app ID again, you pass in the original text and the translated text, and from which language to which language, and you can give it a rating as well. And that rating gives you the ability to say, you know, I rate this very highly, this is much more likely to be the right result, or I'm not sure, it might be, it might not be. But it gives you the ability to manage that. So it's very simple, you just fire it up and it will go up and you can almost fire and forget that one. But of course, we said we wanted to be able to batch these things, we want to be able to do them as a group, so we can do this as an array as well. So here we can do the same thing, except we add a translation array. And this time we can pick a whole bunch of different things, and they don't even have to necessarily be you know, the same ratings. So you can, that looks better. Chris, is that better? There's a letter missing. I've just screwed up your translation in German. Sorry, Chris. But so here you can see that for each one that we're translating, we're giving it a word, but we're also giving it a rating. So how do we actually do that? Again, it's a very simple call, which I showed you. The thing to be aware of when you're adding a translation is that if it's all successful, the result you get back is nothing. Right? So as long as everything is good, you'll get nothing back. If you make a mistake or something doesn't stick, then you'll get a result back. So to the most part, it's fire and forget. If you have an issue, it'll come back and let you know what that issue was, if you have a parameter missing or something like that. So that's well and good if you're a coder and you want to do that in HTTP or SOAP. But there's also an alternative for you if you just want to add a widget to your site and manage the alternative. So Vikram's going to show you how you go about doing that.
Yeah, so you briefly glimpsed the adoption portal for the widget earlier on when Neil was talking about what we announced last year. And since that time, it evolved to add some of the customization options that I was talking about. And one of the nice things about the widget, I mean, when we first did it, nobody else was doing it this way. If you wanted to add translations to your site without actually doing a bunch of coding on your site, you could put an add-on, and when somebody clicked on it, it would take you away from your site. It would go off to MicrosoftTranslator.com or Google Translate or some other site, Babelfish. And so you generally tended to lose your visitors and kind of break the flow. So what we had done at that point was actually make it really, really seamless and really easy for you to integrate the translations into your site without having to really code. And since that time, we've tried to improve that experience and make it more customizable. And so one of the things that we have done is provide some translation settings. So now you can basically decide whether you would like the widget to notify somebody who comes to your site whose browser is set to a different language than the content of your site, to notify asking them whether they would like to see the site in their language. You could also do an automatic translation. And you can also choose whether you'd like to display the little widget control or not. And one of the nice things about displaying the control is that it gets rendered in the language of the person who is visiting your site, which is nice because even if your site is not in that language, they know that they can click on this and see it. And then one of the key pieces of today's announcement is the collaborative translations piece. And this is basically you all have an invite card in your attendee bags today. So you will need that invite code in order to get to that screen. And once you got there, as Neil mentioned, you need a Bing Developer App ID that you put in here, and that's it. And the key thing about the app ID is you should probably keep it secret and keep it safe, because that's basically what ties you to the translation edits that happen on your site. So if you want to adopt the widget on multiple sites and have each site benefit the other, you want to use the same app ID on all these sites. And anybody who has this app ID would have the authority to basically act as you, as the webmaster of that site. So I'll show you. So let's assume we put in the site address, pick the language of the site, and enabled CTF and generated the code. So we've got an example site where this is actually a site on MSDN, and we have this widget, Raymond's blog, and Raymond adopted this widget with this functionality turned on. And so this is how it appears, and anyone who comes to the site can basically click on that to translate. And as you can see, it's progressively translating. You can see the progress bar up top, and it's already gone ahead and translated much of that page, and it's just finished. So you can, at any point in time, you can go, and now in addition to the tooltip that you had seen in version 1, you actually see more translations link on that tooltip. And so as you can see, that particular sentence could have been better. So I went there as a webmaster or as another user who's visiting the site, and I clicked on the more translations. And now I'm actually seeing a set of translations provided by the community, and one of the translations has come from the machine translation service. So I now have the option to either decide, oh, okay, this might be a good translation, or this is not a good translation, and pick the one that I like. Or I can also say, well, none of these are good, so I will edit one of these and submit it as well. So let's say I picked this, and as you can see, that got replaced over here. But one of the things here is I'm just a guest. So I've provided some feedback, and it has benefited me immediately, but it really doesn't benefit all the other guests that are coming to the site in the future, other than them being able to just invoke this alternatives UI and look at it. So, but if I was the webmaster and I had the same idea, I said, wow, that sentence could be improved. What I could do is I could come here, I could sign in into this site. So I'm back on my site, and since I left it off in translation mode, it automatically started translating. So now I go back here, and I am signed in as the webmaster, and I like this one, or I want to edit this one and then submit it. So now when I do this, it's now become the authoritative translation for this particular sentence on my site. And so now even if I sign out of here and pretend that it's somebody else who's come to this site and started translating, you will notice that the one that we selected as the webmaster, became the default alternative. So from now onwards, anybody who comes to the site will actually see the translation that I chose as the best translation. And this also, we also plan to have an option that will go live very soon, where you can invite somebody to come and act on your behalf to help improve the translations. So when Dr. Neil said it's either free or almost free, you could choose to invite a professional translator to come and help improve the translations on the site. And because at this point they're mostly editing or selecting from other alternatives that could be significantly cheaper than just outsourcing everything to a localizer. So that's basically what the widget experience looks like. Of course, if you want to more deeply integrate this into your site, you only want to translate the comments on your site, but you want to translate everything else professionally, and the comments being the ones that are dynamically generated or they keep getting added onto. Maybe you just want to turn on this functionality to those comments. Those kinds of scenarios are all possible, and you can choose from whether you want to use the AJAX API or the HTTP API. And since collaborative translations is a part of our APIs, you can definitely use that in any which way that would be preferable to you. So I also just wanted to highlight before I turn you back on to Neil is we have a pretty extensive MSDN reference to follow, and today I don't think we actually have time to go over all the methods that we support, but you can always go and explore them over on MSDN.
Yeah, and the MSDN documentation, as you can see, goes through all the different endpoints that we support as well. So the AJAX endpoint, the HTTP, and the SOAP endpoints, and give you a little bit of sample code and some things to do. There's also this Getting Started guide, which is a very useful way of getting your head around it and getting going. The great thing about the widget that Vikram just showed you is that there really is no code that you have to write. You get all that functionality for free by just logging in with your live ID, getting an app ID, plugging that in with, remember the code that you get in your bags, you'll need that. Use that code, and you'll get that widget, and then you can put it on your site. And there's no coding to do. So it's a lot of functionality available now just to do this, and very little effort required.
Yeah, and over the next few weeks, you will notice progressively there will be some new options added to the UI, and there's also further improvements that we will continue to make in terms of browser compatibility and a few other fit and finish items. But most of the core functionality you can try out today.
So the next feature is probably one of my favorite features, although in some ways it's, again, very little work for us to use it. The ability to get the text read back out to us in a number of different languages. So the first thing to do if you need to, or you want to use this, is you need to request which languages we support. And because over certainly the last year since we announced the first version of the translator, constantly languages get added. Every 6 to 8 weeks seems that languages are being added. Keep an eye on Vikram's blog, you'll see languages are added regularly. So the number of languages supported is growing. So really what you want to do is enable that to be dynamic on your site. So you need to be able to, first of all, get the list, and this is the list of languages that are currently supported for the text-to-speech. But that will grow, so you need to know how to get hold of that. And again, it's a very simple call to get languages for speak. And that'll give you an array of strings, and those strings will contain the language codes. So it really is just a list of strings that's given back to you, and each of those strings contains that language code that I displayed up there. So the next thing you want to do is actually get it to speak that language. And you just call the speak with your app ID, the speak endpoint, the text, and the language. And let's just turn the speaker up a bit on this. And we'll paste something in there in French. And hopefully this will...
Les fonctionnaires ont été également prodés par les apiculteurs qui, dans une pétition et à un public entendu le mois dernier, fait valoir que leur ruche promouvoir une agriculture durable dans la ville.
She just asked you out.
Yeah, I know. I'm going out with her tonight. Yeah. So I think that is a really, if you think about all the APIs we've shown you and you plug this API into the end of it once you get the results out, that is a very powerful tool that's now being handed over to you to enable you to not only do the translations, but get audio out of what that translation sounds like.
So one of the nice things at Microsoft is that there's a lot of investments happening in a lot of different spaces, including speech. And so what you just saw is one of our, the voices and the speech technology comes out of the speech group. And being in Microsoft Research is very beneficial that way, because we kind of have a front row seat at seeing what investments are happening. And so you will notice over the coming months that there will be a larger list of languages, and also probably more interesting and better sounding voices, because there's a lot of research going on in that space within Microsoft.
So really, we want everyone to be able to use this. The fact that we support multiple endpoints, the fact that we are multi-platform, we know that there are apps out there doing things on not just PHP. There's an iPhone app out there using Microsoft Translator. There's a number of different technologies out there. It doesn't have to be a website. It can be smart client as well to plug into this. And it really is so simple, there's no reason not to. Now, apparently there's a new phone coming out soon, and I just heard a rumor. I don't think it's been announced yet, has it? But one of those things that's going to be important to a lot of developers, and we've already had a number of requests for this, is to really make it super simple for Silverlight developers to plug into the translator backend. So wouldn't it be cool if in Silverlight you could just make a couple of calls and get the content translated out back in your Silverlight application? And so, of course, in good tradition, here's the demo, and I'll show you the code to make this work. This is a Silverlight application. For our Dutch friends, we can get this content, and this is reading a set of RSS feeds from around the world, and then translating them on the fly. So if you watch, the feed will first appear in the native language, and then it will get translated across into the language that we've specified in the drop-down. And like I said, one of the things we really wanted to do is make this really, really simple for you. So we've bundled up and hidden even that real simple HTTP and SOAP stuff. You don't even have to worry about that anymore. What we've done is created a translation client class. So you just need to create a translation client class, add some event handlers to it for the different events, like getting the languages back out, detecting languages, doing the translation. You can then get a piece of text, get some content, and you can take that content and call detect async on the translation client object, detect async with that text, and it'll start trying to detect what language that text is in. When that returns, it'll bring us to the detect language completed event handler. So as long as you've set up that event handler, you'll get that event raised with the language that was detected. And here you can see in the event args, let me just bring this round here. This detect completed event args will give you the original text and the language that we've detected that text is in. And then you can, here again we're picking the language that was chosen from the drop-down. You can just call translate async, and it will go away and it will do the translation of the original text from that language to the new language that you've chosen. And when that's completed, as long as you've set up the event handler, you'll get the translated completed event, and the translated completed event, again, will give you translate completed event arguments, and that event arguments will contain the original text that you asked to be translated and the translated text. And that is it. That's how simple we've made it. So this will ship through one channel or another in the next couple of months, and you'll be able to get hold of it and start plugging translation into your Silverlight applications with very, very little energy. So let's actually pick a language that's something maybe someone in the audience knows, and it'll go away and do that translation. So like I said, very strong focus we've put onto trying to simplify this really down to the very basics that you need as a Silverlight developer, so you don't have to worry about all the plumbing that goes on behind and pulling out the different parameters from the results and stripping them out and deciding how to handle them. We've done all of that for you. So I guess the web world is still, pretty important, and still in many ways the biggest audience that we see for Translator. And it's great to see that MSDN is now doing some really good stuff with the Translator on the blogs and on the MSDN site. And I'd like to invite Diane from MSDN to come up and talk a little bit about what she's been doing. And yes, I love recursion. I love seeing technology being used from the place that it was originally generated from back on itself again. So, okay. Diane, we need a mic.
Can you guys hear me? No? Thank you very much.
Just don't walk too far from him.
Okay, I'll take him with me. Hi, everyone. My name is Diane Glimp, and I'm a program manager at Microsoft. My team manages the localization for MSDN and TechNet. And I worked very closely with MSR over the last few weeks to actually get the new translator widget, CTF, up and running on Raymond Chen's blog on MSDN. And also it's on, does anyone ever read Hey Scripting Guy on TechNet?
No, wrong audience.
Oh, well. It's live there, too. So I thought I would just, we're always looking for ways to improve the amount of translated content we have on MSDN and TechNet. I wonder if I can get a show of hands for people in the room who are here from outside the United States. Wow, that's great. So does anyone here visit MSDN? Okay, just want to make sure. No one goes to TechNet, everyone goes to MSDN. You may have seen that in the MSDN library, if anyone here is from Brazil, that the Visual Studio library, set of library docs, has all been machine translated and uses community translation. So we are extremely excited about the collaborative translation framework because it will allow us to place this widget on other properties within MSDN to allow more translated content out there, and also to encourage the community to provide translations for us so that we can make better translations. Yeah, there's Hey Scripting Guy. So I'm going to be at the booth.
Commons. In the Commons, we have a product booth. So
Yeah.
if you want to talk to Diane about their experiences in incorporating this technology into these blogs and what other plans they might have with respect to MSDN, she'll be available there.
Yeah, anything that you want to get, any feedback on MSDN, translated content on MSDN, I would love to hear from you. My email address also is dianeg@microsoft.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Sure.
Yeah, so one of the things, as Diane mentioned, the whole collaborative translations piece is not that new for our team. We've several years ago, the MSDN wiki, we did this experiment in order to see how the community would react to having the opportunity to influence the machine translation results and impact them directly, and it was quite a successful experiment. And so since that time, this whole concept of doing anywhere translations, where we empower developers and site owners to bring translations to their scenarios and then add the power to actually influence those translations, were the two key tenets of what we have, the focus that we have had as a team. And so I feel very pleased to be here to actually be able to announce this stuff to you guys.
Cool. So really, you guys have no excuses now. When I visit your site next time, I expect to be able to read it in any language I can read. which basically means English or French. But
there's no support for Australian yet.
They don't support Australian. We're working on that one. And Kiwi would be nice too. But so, if you want to just take the real simple route, just get your whole page, the whole site translated, just add the widget. You want to specify which particular areas, but you don't want to go too detailed. Use the Ajax API, just a bit of JavaScript. You can specify which divs will get translated. You can, for example, leave your title, leave your brand untranslated, and just translate the components you want. Or if you want to get much more detailed, or you want to do something on a smart client or a different platform altogether, use the SOAP or the HTTP endpoints, and you get very rich control. You get the results back, and you can disseminate those results and do what you want with them. And like I just showed you, although we're not giving it to you today, coming very, very soon, the Silverlight control as well, that will just enable you to really plug a DLL and make 4 function calls and get translation and language detection added to your Silverlight application. There is, of course, a whole heap of resources out there, and the Translator blog is very valuable if you want to keep your eye on which languages are getting added and what's happening. Then the Translator blog is a good place to start. The interactive SDK, which actually I didn't show you, let me see if I can bring that up. But the interactive SDK is a brilliant place.
Time for questions, so.
Yeah, the interactive SDK is a brilliant place to. Let's see if I've got it here. This is not the live one. This is the interactive SDK running on the test sites that we've been building. But you can pick any of the methods you want, and it'll give you that code that you need in order to build out the interactive SDK, to build out your site from the interactive SDK, from any of the interfaces. So here we go. You can see here it's running, and there's the code behind. If you want to pick another method, there's the code behind. You can see the C# code is there as well. And we've done something to make it even easier for you to copy and paste the code, because we know one of the things that typically is a bit of a pain is copying and pasting the code. So you just click on that, and there's all the code just as pure text. No markup or anything for you to strip out or any of that messing around, because we know you really just want to copy and paste what you need and get on with doing the hard part of your job. So adding translation, again, very easy using the interactive SDK. And of course, Translator is used, like I said at the beginning, by a number of Microsoft properties now. So IE8 has got Translator with the accelerator built in. There's a messenger bot. It's in Live Search or Bing Translator. Bing Search now uses it. Integrated into Office. So it's pretty much, being used by a lot of other technology groups within Microsoft, which is great, because that means that, the future of this group and the future of what the growth and features that they'll get to add is going to continue.
Yeah, I want to plug the bot. I think a lot of people, when they discover it, are quite amazed by how much you can do with it. And it is a very, very popular service. So if you just add emptybot@hotmail.com to your Messenger buddy list, you can both basically have a conversation with the bot where you're sending in some text and it tells you what it should be in a different language. But you can also have a group conversation where you can add somebody who speaks a different language and have the bot translate both ways. So it also makes for a very interesting demo, but we don't really have enough time because I want to give you guys some time to ask questions.
So thank you very much for listening. I'd like to open the floor to listen to some things from you as well. And if you have questions, please step up to the mic or shout them out, and I'll try and repeat them. Yeah?
So it
Let's
really...
repeat the question first for the sake of recordings.
So the question was, our friend here has a fairly typical localization process, which is you have a lot of strings in resource files, in regex files, and they usually hand them off to localizers to get them translated and bring them back. So the question is, because a lot of this is happening in the cloud, does all that go away? And so the answer to that is twofold. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So we don't always recommend that you just do away with your localizers and just use this, right? So it really depends on how mission critical this content is, how active your community is, or if you would like to use your localizers in conjunction with this. And depending on what your answer is to that particular question, you may be able to get away from the idea of pre-localizing. So in a way, one mechanism for you could be that you pick the ones that are very highly mission critical and you pre-translate them and use your localizers to make sure that they are perfect. And then for the areas of your site or your app that could do with machine translation and a combination of human machine translations, you might want to enable those and invite somebody to do that. And those, like you said, will be served up from the cloud. Hope that answers your question. And
that's a great question, and so you get a T-shirt in typical conference fashion. And in typical conference fashion, it doesn't go quite far enough.
Well, it's always fun to see if we have good enough arms.
So now all the arms go up, yes. We have a question.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
so the question is, if you have content that you want translated that's very confidential, is there a way to somehow use Microsoft Translator but guarantee that information using some kind of SLA or some kind of agreement never gets out from being passed back up to Translator and back down again? Is that right?
Yeah. So basically a question around security. So if I have content that I don't want to send out in clear text, or I don't actually want anybody else to be able to see it at all, what options do I have? And then secondly, if I am an enterprise and I'd like to use this service, is there an SLA that you can provide about availability and so forth? So good question. Thank you. And since about middle of last year, we have actually been signing commercial licenses with companies. And while it's still been predominantly a free service, even to commercial licensees, we definitely are putting together other tiers of service that would be available for, at a different pricing model to turn on some of these features. And so the secure socket layer support, for instance, was something that we kind of saw as being a valuable addition, no matter who you are, whether you're an enterprise or not. And to some of our enterprise customers, that's good enough. And they don't have to pay us anything anymore. They just sign a commercial license, but continue to use the service at no cost. But for some customers, there might be a requirement that their translations and the requirement for a specific type of an SLA, and we are more than happy to work with them to try and enable it for them. So if you have any licensing related questions, you can find this email address on our site, microsofttranslator.com, but you can email us at mtlic@microsoft.com. So that's MT licensing, so mtlic@microsoft.com.
Or they could come and find you at the booth and have a conversation.
And we also have a product stand in the Commons, and we'll be there for the rest of the event. So feel free to come by and we can have a conversation.
So we've got a question at the back. Yep. No, that's you. Yes. So the question is, what happens with? I'm trying to boil the question down to basically what happens to content within tags. And the content within tags, so markup content that's not really the displayed or rendered content, is ignored by the translator. So you can see that if you translate like a whole div, it'll keep the contents like the bold markers and all those kind of things absolutely perfect. The hrefs will all be kept. That's no problem. It's just the content that's rendered that gets translated.
What about attributes like title attribute or alt text on an image tag and things like that?
All text on an image tag. That's interesting. Sandor, do you know the answer to that? Well, it's not handled, so it won't get translated. Yeah. It's only so. Yeah, that's a good point.
So you might, I mean, the thing is you have flexibility to basically put it inside some other type of a tag or, send it to us. And in addition, there might be an interesting follow-up question on this, which is if I am using the Ajax API or the widget, but I just don't want, some part of my text to be translated, some part of my web page to be translated, is there a way to do that? And you can do that as well. We do support no translate class, Chandra? Yeah, a no translate class that you can put on an element, and we basically don't touch that element. So, yeah, over here.
In regards to what you're talking with licensing, if I have a line of business application that's in Silverlight, and I have different clients using it who may translate the same English word to, say, French, but they translate it differently. So one calls it client, one calls it customer. Can I have multiple translations of the same word?
Yeah, this is, so the question was, if I am building an app that I basically give to many different clients, but these clients are probably in different domains, so they translate certain things differently. The same word might get translated in different ways, or the same sentence might get translated in different ways. How can I make that happen? That's basically the question. And so the answer for that is, one way to do that is basically make the app ID client specific. So basically, if I set a preference, if I create a preference in the app that says, go get your app ID and plug it in here, then all the edits that are happening that are related to that app ID kind of belong to that particular scenario. So it's only when you want that to actually also apply to some other app that you have to use the same app ID in both the apps. But that should be fairly easy to do otherwise.
So we're running out of time here. I suggest that what we do is if you've got more questions, please come down to the booth area, go to the Commons, go to the booth. There's going to be people manning that booth for the rest of the day tomorrow. Vikram will be there, I'll be there, Sandor and Chris will be there, there'll be other people. Please come and speak to us if you have questions. Thank you very much.